eh, Kiss Me Again came out in 77. So I met Arthur in 76.
Okay.
Um, Up until that point, there had been DJs doing mixes, but no one had produced a record, which was, picking the song, picking the studio, recording with the musicians, doing the arrangement. I was in on all of that from the ground floor.
Okay. You guys actually headhunted lots of the session musicians because of the records that Arthur liked that you were
Right.
playing in the gallery.
I looked this up. You talked about Wilbur Bascomb, the bass player, in a
That's
question,
right.
because there was this record. It was called, I thought it was called Bluegrass, but it wasn't. It was called Blackgrass,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a 45. And I used to play it at the first gallery. It was very early on, like 1971, and it was, for some reason, it was one of the things that I played for Arthur, and Arthur was entranced by it, and
Yes.
and he wanted Wilbur to play on our record. And Alan Schwartzberg was one of the biggest drummers of the time. I mean, he was playing on everything. Big cocaine addict. I remember he was doing cocaine off the snare drum while we were recording the record.
Okay. And how long did it
Because it was
take
it
to?
was a 15-minute, it's 15 minutes. You got to play straight through. There was no like piecing it together these days. It was like it
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
long
yeah,
haul. We absolutely did post production, but the basic
yeah.
track, which is the guitar, the keyboards, a scratch vocal, that wasn't the scratch vocal that you hear on the record. I think in Arthur's mix, in the Dinosaur mix, that is the scratch vocal. In the Jimmy Simpson mix, which is the mix that became famous, the Dinosaur mix was not the mix that was played in the club. It was
Okay.
it was the Jimmy Simpson mix that was the famous mix. Do you know Ray Caviano? Do you know anything about Ray Caviano? Do you know the
Uh,
name?
I had Warner Records, is
Right.
it?
Okay. So Ray Caviano was a promotion man back then, and he had gotten this $7 million deal undeservedly with Warner Brother Records. And my record was through Sire. So Sire went through what distributor? Warner. So he's doing Change. Kiss Me Again is already done. It's already hitting the dance floors. He stops it and says, I want a remix of this. So Jimmy Simpson goes in and he does the remix, and Bob does Change while we're doing the remix and starts pushing Change and buries Kiss Me Again. So that's basically the story.
Right, okay. You weren't very happy then.
No, Sawyer picked up the contract and everything. If I wasn't so stoned out, we would still be on Sawyer today. Arthur alone was impossible to deal with. Sawyer just cut him loose. He should have been on Sawyer. Like, I was stoned out. What was his fucking excuse? He he could have delivered that second record, no problem. It was already done. It was great too. Um, Jerry, the Voices of East Harlem singer, Jerry, I forget her name, was the singer on it. It was called Dancing Through the Night. It was incredible. To this day, I don't even have a copy of it. I wish I did. And it was done. I was in there recording it with him. We had put in background sounds and everything, and it sounded great. It was a little bit slower, funkier, but it would have worked great. And he never delivered it to Sire. I mean, he was just uh, Arthur never worked well alone. He needed someone to stop him and to finish the records and put them out. Otherwise, nothing would have come out. If Steve D'Acquisto was not with him on Is It All Over My Face, that would have never happened. If it wasn't taken out of his hands and given to Larry, it would have never happened. Um, and on and on and on. Go Bang. If Francois didn't take that out of his hands and remix it and put it out on Sleeping Bag, it would have never happened. So, that's Arthur's story.
Yeah.
And I don't know how
What?
he's looked at as this big god. I mean, like a talented musician who would have got nothing done if people in his life didn't take it from him and make it work for him.
What was driving this then? What was driving this notion that he had in his head that he couldn't finish things? Can you put it down to anything? Can you
Obsessive
explain it?
compulsion. Okay, there's 16 at the time. There were only 16 tracks on the tape. Wasn't even yet 24 track. I think on Kiss Me Again we used the 16 track tape, but I think there was 24 at the time. I'm not sure what we used. Okay, but I think we used the 16, and it's a 2-inch tape. So now so one track usually per instrument is usually what you do. On one track, Arthur had 7 instruments playing in different parts. In other words, so if the horns only played here, he would stick the keyboards in on the same track and then a different keyboard part on the same track, whatever didn't play together, and then the cello part, all that was on one track. So when someone went in to mix it, it was like a fucking puzzle that only Arthur understood. It was like Larry Levan when he told me in the garage. Larry Levan once brought me back to the equipment room, and it was a mess. There were wires everywhere, and you couldn't understand anything that was going on. And Larry said to me, "You know what I call that?" And I looked at the wires on the floor, and I was like, "No, what?" He said, "Insurance." That was like Arthur and recording little bits on each track. Was like no one else could make that work but him. That,
I see.
that
I
and
see.
that was Larry. Same thing. That
Having to have the
it's a
control.
stupid notion. You know what? This has been my deal always from the beginning. If you have talent, you shouldn't be afraid of showing someone what record you're playing or letting someone, know how you're doing things, because it's not what you're doing with what you're doing it with. It's how you're doing it. That is your talent. No, I didn't. Um, it's so. I'm sorry that I was answering John a question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so whereas Arthur and Larry were of the school that, show people nothing, give them nothing, and keep them in the dark so that you hold on to what you have. And maybe they were right because my career ended and they went on. So maybe they
Okay.
had a big thing going on. I don't know.
I suppose people would like to hear what the process of recording with Arthur was like, apart from this obsessive compulsive thing. So you came into the studio, you had the song charted and mapped out and arranged and everything. And so what happened then? How long were you in the studio for? 3 days, 4 days?
No, way longer than that. I mean, that was just the basic track session was, we were in there at least 10 hours to get the basic tracks. And
Okay.
with Arthur, which should have took 3 hours because it was all charted, it was all ready to go. These were professional musicians, they knew exactly what to do, and they were playing it fine. But every time they would do a take, there was a little something that Arthur didn't like, and he would redo the whole take, which is the worst thing you can do. When you get a great take, I learned that on Tiger Stripes because we have a fantastic first take of Tiger Stripes with Evelyn King, and not Evelyn King,
Thomas.
Evelyn Thomas, thank you. That is fucking unreal. And we erased it because Arthur wanted to use a Lynn drum machine. I should have, and the original was with a live drummer. And I should have never, ever, ever done that because that original take was magic. And you don't recapture magic like that. I remember just being so frustrated with him that I would walk out of the studio because he would be working on a part that I thought sounded fine, and
Okay.
he'd be working on it for 8 hours. A little cello part, the cello part in it,
Yeah.
um, and it sounded actually the earlier takes for me were better than the later takes because the later takes were um, very regimentated, whereas the earlier takes were jazzier. He had like jazzier parts where he was more fluid, and he erased them. He didn't like them. They weren't. He thought they weren't danceable enough, which was why I was there, But he couldn't let that. He couldn't work with someone. The only reason I was able to finish the record was because I was paying for it. So it was all my money that produced that record. So it when when it got to a point, I just cut him off and mixed it. Otherwise,
Okay.
it wouldn't have happened.
So there was a point you had to say, "Thus far, we
Yeah,
gone."
goodbye. Get out. I'm mixing this.